VR on YouTube, music on Facebook, and Apple Watch in your junk drawer. Tech News Tonight is next.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Tonight, episode 461 for Thursday, November 5th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Epson's new EcoTank printers. With Epson's line of SuperTank all-in-one printers, you can print thousands of documents without running out of ink. EcoTank is loaded and ready to print when you are. Visit epson.com/ecotank to find out more. Welcome, I'm Megan Maroney. Let's get to the tech news. Virtual reality is inching ever forward into mainstream reality. Today, Google announced that you can now watch all of YouTube in VR with Google Cardboard. You'll need the new YouTube app and an Android phone. Back in March, we told you that YouTube had begun to support 360 video. Facebook does that too. But the VR video support that YouTube announced today is slightly different. Google wants to make it as painless as possible for normal people to experience VR. You can select the option to watch any video in Cardboard, put your phone in the viewer, and instantly your real life will never be good enough for you again. Fresh off their staggering earnings call that put the company's market value ahead of General Electric, Facebook is launching a new service called Music Stories that will allow you to add song clips from Apple Music, iTunes, and Spotify right to your newsfeed. The recommendation and discovery feature will roll out on iOS first, allowing you to listen to a 30-second preview of a shared song or album without leaving Facebook. You don't even need a subscription to Spotify or Apple Music to listen to the music, since Facebook will stream songs using its own player. Breaking news, Apple's favorite blogger, John Gruber of Daring Fireball, has stopped wearing his Apple Watch. For the record, I have stopped wearing mine too, but only for a week so I can test the Microsoft Band 2. And I miss my Apple Watch. I found myself sitting at my desk for 3 hours today because I had forgotten how to remind myself to stand up. On his latest podcast, The Talk Show, Gruber says that he has never been super excited about the watch, and he is not alone. Research firm Canalys said that Apple has shipped 7 million Apple Watches since it launched in the spring. This might sound like a lot, but it falls below Wall Street's expectations. And apparently people's expectations for the watch are not quite being met either. But don't feel too sorry for Apple yet. They're still way beyond the competition. Canalys says that 7 million figure is more than all other smartwatch vendors' combined shipments over the previous 5 quarters. A few weeks ago, we spoke to Mashable about the TPP trade agreement and how it might affect our online rights. The full text of the previously secret Trans-Pacific Partnership International Trade Agreement has been released, and privacy experts do not like what they see. The agreement is intended to establish international standards for copyright enforcement, labor practices, environmental regulations, and a whole lot more. The document is over 2,000 pages long, so if you've got some free time this weekend, you might want to check it out. Or not. Boing Boing says the proposed bill includes new copyright rules that last lifetime plus 75 years. Internet service providers must hand over your name if requested by copyright holders. ISPs are required to remove material upon receipt of a copyright claim, and you cannot sue if that claim was bogus. The e-commerce chapter also contains language that could allow your personal data to be subject to different laws when it crosses borders. President Obama supports the bill, but there will be a 90-day period of investigation before he can sign it. Coming up, how one tech reporter survived without Twitter. And do you want a third eye HD camera on your forehead? But first, this episode is brought to you by Epson. Epson's revolutionary EcoTank line of printers for home and office introduce a new age in printing. The new EcoTank ET4550 wireless all-in-one printer features a refillable ink tank. Comes with enough ink to print up to 8,500 pages, equivalent to about 50 ink cartridge sets. You're loaded and ready to print for up to 2 years. Powered by Epson's leading-edge precision core technology, it delivers high-speed, vivid colors and laser-quality black text, plus auto two-sided printing, a 30-page auto document feeder, and easy wireless printing from tablets and smartphones. Visit epson.com/ecotank today to transform the way your home, office, or work group prints. For the best combination of ease and value, turn to the new Epson EcoTank printers. That's epson.com/ecotank, and we thank Epson for their support. Here in the U.S., the holidays are right around the corner, which for some means planning a travel vacation. Others might already be looking forward to planning a trip for spring break. Our guest today says that when she travels, she doesn't like to plan at all. She just uses her smartphone. Welcome, Selena Larson, staff writer at The Daily Dot.
Hi. Hi, how's it going? Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. You just got back from Europe, and you wrote a great piece about the apps that were indispensable for you, a non-vacation planner, vacationer. Tell us about the apps that you use the most.
Yeah, so I think at the very beginning, I kicked it off by saying I wasn't on social media. So I wasn't really asking people for suggestions. I mean, I might have a while ago been like, hey, does anyone know where I should go? But I really used Foursquare. I would say that was the most surprising thing that I used all the time. And TripAdvisor, those were the two that I used to kind of get around the city, look for things to do, places to eat. So I used Foursquare. I don't use it a whole lot normally. I'm actually more of a Yelp person. But when I was in Europe, all my friends were saying, oh, no, people here use Foursquare. Foursquare is what Europeans use mostly. So I would go on there, and I used it occasionally to find places to eat. But more often than not, if I accidentally stumbled across something because I never was planning on where I was going, I would save it either for later or to write about on a travel blog. So I used Foursquare a lot, and it was pretty surprising. The other one, like you were saying, I never really plan where I'm going or what I'm doing. So Hostel World was totally indispensable because I could just pull it up and say, all right, I need a bed for tonight. And it would show me all of the places that were available in the different cities, and I could check them out. There are a ton of reviews, scroll through photos, and I could connect with a hostel right from my phone and make a reservation in 3 minutes. So it was super, super helpful.
So you really didn't know where you were staying at all. You just went and relied on the kindness of the internet.
Basically, yes. And so I was unprepared to where I was going, and I honestly didn't even know how long I would be staying in the different cities or which cities I would be going to. So it was kind of a last minute thing, and often I would look on like when I was in Amsterdam, I was looking on Hostel World, and I was seeing which cities had the best reviewed hostels and the best things to do, and that's how I decided which cities to visit. And then I hopped on a train and and booked my hostel and went there, or hotel. I mean, there are hotels and bed and breakfast and stuff too.
So did you download maps before, or did you just use the GPS? Was that helpful to you as well?
Yeah, for sure. So I have T-Mobile, which is really good for traveling abroad. I had unlimited data and unlimited texting in all of the countries that I went to. T-Mobile has a huge list of countries and cities that they provide the service in. So I had the unlimited everything plan here in the States. So when I travel abroad, I went to France, Belgium, and Amsterdam. The data carried over. So I could use I could use my phone wherever I was. So obviously Google Maps helped a lot too.
So someone not on T-Mobile would probably have to do some planning beforehand, or plan to switch to T-Mobile.
Well, I mean, of course, there are different services. You can either like switch your SIM while you're there if you're planning on traveling for a long time. You can buy data. So whatever country you're in, you can talk to your service provider and say, hey, this is where I'm going, and this is the plan that I need. And you can buy X gigabytes of data to take with you. There are some other phone services. I'm not super familiar with, like say Verizon Wireless or AT&T, but I do know that when I was traveling abroad with AT&T, I could access data on my phone, and it would just charge me differently when I was abroad versus when I was in the States. And obviously it would be more expensive, but it was just as easy to use. And my friends, I thought it was kind of funny actually, my friends were pretty surprised that I didn't have to get a SIM and was just using my average T-Mobile iPhone, and it was really easy.
So one of the struggles, I think, with traveling, getting around, especially like taking taxis and having to, it's in a place where you don't speak the language, try to, describe where you want to go. You said that you used Uber, and that really worked out. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. So Uber is super helpful in that you can just obviously pull it up and put in the destination, and the driver knows right where you're going. It's also helpful too if you're not familiar with a place, you know that the driver's taking you in the quickest, most direct route because they are being held accountable by the map. I've had instances, not just obviously abroad, but when I take taxis either in New York or San Francisco, they kind of go a roundabout way thinking that you might not be familiar with where you're going. And so there's that aspect of it. There's also the safety aspect of it too. I know that Uber and ride-sharing cars in the past have caught some flack for having safety issues and people feeling uncomfortable. For me, my friends and I, we were at a warehouse party north of Paris at 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning, and there were no taxis around, and we didn't know how we were going to get home, and the subway was closed. So luckily we had Uber, and the Uber came and picked us up, and it was a pretty long drive back to where we were going. It was like 20 minutes. But because we had the Uber app, they just came and picked us up, and we felt really safe getting back to where we were staying from a place that we were unfamiliar with.
So you mentioned earlier that normally when you want suggestions, you just go to Facebook or Twitter and ask people, and that you might have done that earlier, but part of your trip was you were going to try to disconnect a little bit. So you deleted Facebook and Twitter from your phone in order to disconnect, but you said you kept Instagram. Why did you keep Instagram?
Yeah, so I think part of the reason why I kept Instagram was because I was taking so many photos anyway on my phone. It was I did bring like a really nice camera. I brought a DSLR, but more often than not, I was taking pictures with my phone. And it was a very easy way to just sort of let people know that I'm alive and I can push my Instagram photos to Facebook automatically. So these were like two different networks of friends and family that could see that I was in existence. And I think also too, for me anyways, on Instagram, it's a lot easier to just not consume content. So when I'm on Twitter or Facebook, it can be very easy to just kind of like wind up scrolling through the feed, to like killing time and stuff. But on Instagram, it's a lot easier for me to ignore the feed and to not look at other people's photos and just kind of post mine, share it to Facebook, and then close the app.
So you were pushing those photos to Facebook. So was there any moment where you just really wanted to see what was happening to those photos on Facebook?
No, not really. Obviously I deleted the app, so I wasn't getting a notification, so I didn't know if people were commenting or liking on them at all. It didn't really bother me. And for the most part, it was really nice not to talk to anyone for an extended period of time, because social media can get so noisy, and it was really nice to just kind of, cut all that off. And any of my good friends who wanted to talk to me had my number. They could text me, and I could text them back. But in terms of social media, it was nice to have a little bit of a cleansing time. Just delete everyone.
Did you have any withdrawal symptoms?
No, I didn't.
Good to hear. What about your friends that you were with you? Were they also disconnected from Twitter and Facebook?
No. So I actually went by myself. The first part of my trip, I was staying with a friend in Amsterdam. And so I was actually working from Amsterdam, which was cool. Writing some stories and stuff from there. So we were kind of all together. But when it came time for my actual vacation, I was all by myself.
Well, this might be hard to answer because you grew up with all this technology, but do you think you would have felt so safe traveling like that if you didn't have that access, if you didn't have the ability to, upload a picture to Instagram so that your family would know you were alive, or take Uber instead of getting into a cab, or just have a device on you where people would be able to find you if something happened? Do you think you would have felt so safe without that?
I think had I not had my phone or had connectivity, I think I would have felt a little less safe. I mean, it is very intimidating when you travel by yourself, especially as a single young woman going to places that you might not be familiar with. So there's always, those times that you might feel unsafe or uncomfortable. But I did feel like because I had my phone and I was I had access to everything that I have access to here, it was a lot easier to not only navigate and find my way around places, but also, say I was, out really late at night or looking for, when the streets are empty, there was no taxis, but I could always have an Uber instead of having to walk. there was definitely that security blanket. It felt, I think I did feel more secure.
So let's move on to another story that you posted today that was really great. On Wednesday, I talked in this show about the engineer Leslie Miley. He was the only Black engineer in a leadership position at Twitter. He left the company citing diversity issues. Now, you interviewed Miley about his departure. What can you tell us about why he left?
So he actually has a really interesting story. And initially he approached Twitter and was like, hey, I want to start this position focusing on exclusively diversity in engineering. And he had the support of everybody that he talked to at Twitter. And when it came time to really execute and build this, he had a meeting with one of the Twitter executives where he just said, oh, well, why don't we make a tool that analyzes candidates by their name? That's how we could kind of we could check diversity and look at the pipeline and see where we're failing, which isn't a solution. And so he felt that without the support or the understanding of executives at the company, he couldn't do the job that he wanted to do to the fullest extent that he would be able to do it. So he was actually impacted by the layoffs. Twitter laid off around 300 folks in October. And so he was one of those people that was impacted, but he told me that he had already decided, he'd already given Twitter his leave and he wanted to go. And it wasn't just that interaction. There were a lot of times he told me about Twitter's diversity missteps, a diversity recruiter saying that she only had time to focus on women when he asked what Twitter was doing to improve hiring of minorities, specifically Hispanic and African Americans in roles at Twitter. And there was another time an executive said that we don't want to have to lower the bar to find talent, which is just ridiculous. And yet it's something that I think a lot of people from underrepresented groups have heard this excuse, and a lot of people use this excuse. That's completely false.
It's really interesting that, they said that in a meeting where he was, just how sort of tone deaf that person would be, that they don't even understand that. You hear that a lot. It's like, oh, well, we don't want to resort to quotas. And it's just like that is, some people don't even understand that that's such an offensive thing to say.
Well, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the quote unquote pipeline, right? We use this pipeline issue where, there are not enough women graduating, or there are not enough people of color graduating from colleges and universities. The talent pool is so small. It's the pipeline. We're going to invest all of this into the pipeline. Or the fact that there aren't enough people, so we'll have to lower the bar to hire talent. And it's just not correct. There was an analysis by USA Today that took a look at the percentage of graduates of underrepresented groups from colleges and universities, and they found that the percent was twice as many minority students were graduating from top-tier universities and colleges with computer science and engineering degrees than big tech companies were hiring. So it's not really that issue, and by using that as an excuse, this pipeline excuse that you hear over and over again, or the lowering the bar comment that's both offensive and factually incorrect, it's just demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of diversity.
Right. And sometimes, the diversity is baked in. People say when they're hiring, I want to hire someone who went to Stanford and worked at Google. And it's already you're capturing all of the people that were biased in, letting someone into Stanford or hiring at Google. It's all baked in. People don't even realize. Some hiring managers are beginning to realize that. But Miley also worked at Google. Were his experiences similar there? Did you talk about that?
Yeah, so one thing that I've actually talked to him before, and he spoke at this I Look Like an Engineer event in San Francisco, where he talked a lot about what it was like to work at Apple, to work at Google, and to work at Twitter. And a lot of his experiences were very similar. And he, one of the things that we talked about that these hiring committees look for is a culture fit, right? You have to fit a certain stereotype or a certain culture to work at tech companies. And oftentimes that's cited as a reason why people don't get hired. If there's no other reason, they weren't a culture fit. And that's just kind of you can't quantify that, right? So I asked him, I was like, well, have you ever, what's a culture fit experience, that you've had? And he mentioned that when he was at Google, he used an avatar of Shaft from that movie from the 70s. He's a very famous African-American character, and he used it as his avatar. And someone complained to him that said, oh, you can't use that as your avatar. It's really intimidating. When his colleagues were using avatars that could be just as intimidating, like a pit bull dog. So that was something that we talked about. And we did discuss hiring committees, which is, I mean, those are perfect examples, like you were saying, the excuse of, oh, they didn't go to X college, or they took too long to graduate, which could be for a number of reasons. I mean, they could have had health problems and had to take 2 years off of school to deal with. This could be they didn't have an internship, or they didn't have the right kind of internship. So there are a lot of like preconceived notions that can often impact hiring and can disproportionately impact hiring people from underrepresented groups.
Well, when I talked about this a few days ago, someone in our chat room argued, I talked about like how few diverse employees there are at Twitter. And someone said that the lack of diverse employees doesn't necessarily mean a company has racist or discriminatory hiring practices. And what would you say to that?
So I think that that's a great point. And Leslie Miley actually wrote about that in his piece. He said he doesn't think that there are bad people that work at Twitter. And he thinks that there are ways for Twitter to fix itself. And he believes that Twitter can fix itself. I think that without actively thinking about these issues and just doing the same things that you do over and over and over again, some of these things are just so ingrained in our brains that we might not realize that this behavior is excluding groups that feel underrepresented or who are underrepresented in technology. For the most part, I do think that people are generally intrinsically good. Nobody sets out. I mean, there are people that set out to actively discriminate against other people. But as Leslie Miley was saying, at Twitter, he worked with amazing people. He liked his colleagues. He liked the company. Twitter itself is a platform that empowers underrepresented voices and really drives conversation. I mean, you look at Black Twitter, that's one of the biggest groups on Twitter. And so Twitter recognizes and embraces this responsibility. And Jack Dorsey himself regularly amplifies those voices. So I think that you have to really actively think about these issues, and you have to take a look at your internal policies, and you have to think about what you're doing in your hiring process. And things like doing a diversity audit, things like hiring for, this job of working on diversity in your company, especially among engineering talents, reaching out to colleges and universities that you don't generally recruit from. Yes, the Stanfords and the MITs and the Carnegie Mellons, this is kind of the stereotype of tech genius, but there's tech genius everywhere. You just might not be looking for it in those places.
Well, Selena Larson, thank you so much for joining us. Selena is a staff writer at the Daily Dot at Selena Larson, back on Twitter now.
I am. It's terrible.
Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
You too. And finally tonight, Google Glass is not dead yet, but as a mainstream product, it was a PR disaster of epic proportions. Now, most of us just couldn't get past the creepiness of having a camera facing us as we talk to the person wearing the device. But one company thinks they can fix all that by moving that camera to the center of your forehead. Third Eye Tech has just launched an Indiegogo campaign for a device called Third Eye. That's the number 3 and the letters RDI. Third Eye is a camera that's strapped to your forehead so you can enjoy your present moment while capturing it for posterity or for your various legal or blackmailing needs. It looks a little like one of those trendy headbands that teenage girls wear, but a gazillion times creepier. But maybe I'm alone in thinking that picture of the mom wearing the third eye while playing with her baby is the stuff of nightmares. At the time that I wrote this, the company had raised $1,200 toward their $250,000 funding goal. The HD camera does come with autofocus, and it is social media friendly with auto upload, so you can automatically share that video you've just forgotten that you've taken. What do you think? Would you wear this? Let me know. I'd love to play your opinion on the show, so record a voice memo. Email it to megan@twit.tv or just email me. We're also on Facebook, so you can leave a comment on the Tech News Tonight Facebook page. Don't forget to search for us using the number 2. And that's it for this edition of Tech News Tonight. You can find us on your favorite podcast app, or you can now choose between 3 different apps on the Apple TV to watch us on your television. You can also subscribe to the show at twit.tv/TN2. Write to us at tn2@twit.tv and watch live every weekday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And don't miss our morning news program, Tech News Today. That's every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Megan Maroney. Thanks for watching.
Bandwidth for Tech News Tonight is brought to you by CashFly.com.